Hey, this is Commander Turn, and today we're going to have a Commander Spotlight on Nekusar the Mindrazer. So he's in Grixis colors. He's blue, black, red, which gives you a lot of variety for counter spells, removal, and a little bit of chaos, which I feel is essential to his build. So anyways, Nekusar, at the beginning of each player's draw step, so including your opponent's, that player draws an additional card. So again, this is like Howling Minds, Dictate of Crewfix, Temple Bell, any kind of card like that. It has a similar type effect. And whenever an opponent draws a card, it causes that player to take 1 damage. So essentially, he's in many ways he's a type of a chaos type synergy general. He's a lot of fun, and let's get into some of the staples for him. Typically, I play Nekusar in a way that's kind of a control stasis type deck. But anyways, we'll get into those cards a little bit later. But firstly, we'll go through some of the staples. So first is Wheel of Fortune. So all players must discard their hands. So again, this will remove cards of high value from their hands, and if they've been tutoring or searching for particular things, it'll force them to discard them. And then that player draws 7 new cards. And when you have Nekusar in play, that's going to be a substantial amount of damage, because obviously they're going to take a point of damage for every card they draw. And this will happen to all of your opponents, so it's not, you're not focusing down any one particular person per se, but you're going to be doing a lot of AoE type damage. Next is Reforge the Soul. It's essentially Wheel of Fortune with a little bit higher of a mana cost. Granted, it does have a miracle effect, so if you're drawn into it, you can play it for its miracle cost, which isn't bad. Next, you have Whirlpool Warrior. So when it enters the battlefield, shuffle the cards from your hand into your library, then draw that many cards. So again, this is going to allow you to refresh your hand, and there are mechanics that, like Psychosis Crawler, that you'll have in this deck that allow you to do damage based on your card draw. But again, when you sacrifice Whirlpool Warrior, each player shuffles the cards from his or her hand into his or her library, then draws that many cards. So again, this is just a Wheel of Fortune type effect where they're going to take damage based on draw. Again, Molten Psyche is essentially the exact same thing. Each player shuffles the cards from his or her library, then draws that many cards. And nice thing about this, low mana cost, and it does have Metalcraft, which is actually fairly attainable in this deck, as you'll see later when we get into some of the artifacts that you use, and also the mana ramp that you'll have in most EDH decks. And it deals damage to each opponent, so across the board again, equal to the number of players that card has drawn this turn. So, that is 7 damage on top of Nekusar, up to 7 damage, and then obviously that'll proc his damage as well. Whispering Madness. Each player discards his or her hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. So this is nice in EDH. Obviously, some people may have reliquary towers or things to augment their hand size, so this can lead to a higher damage output with Nekusar with your commander. Jace's Archivist. He has a nice effect. Each player discards his or her hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. So this can be nice with Icy Manipulator. This is an effect you can pop multiple times. It's a nice combo piece. Here's some other cards that are just general things that can add up the damage, can give you more control in your hand. And like I had mentioned earlier, you got Howling Mind and Dictate of Crewfix. Dictate of Crewfix is nice. You can flash it in whenever. It has nice utility. Howling Mind, again, just an extra card during your draw step, and they fit with your general quite nicely. Next, you have Temple Bell. Each player draws a card. Great card, pretty self-explanatory. Next, we have Underworld Dreams. Whenever an opponent draws a card, it deals 1 damage to him or her. So even if you don't have Nekusar out, this is a nice substitution or a nice addition to having him out, and it can really push the tempo of the game. Then you have Jace. Each player draws a card, another draw effect. You can, obviously, in certain circumstances, you'll just want to draw a card for yourself. However, if you have your general out or you're trying to push damage in that way, each player draws a card. It can be quite nice. And then Blue Sun Zenith. Obviously, at some points in the game, assuming you have maybe Underworld Dreams out and then your general, you can make someone draw quite a bit of cards and burn them out pretty easily. So, and also you can draw cards for yourself, and with cards like Psychosis Crawler, it's going to be pretty solid. So next, these are some other staples. Psychosis Crawler, like I mentioned, is equal to the number of cards in your hand, and in this deck, you're going to have quite a few cards in your hand. So not only is he a powerful body on the board, but whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses a life. So it's a pretty nice effect for this type of deck. And again, Prosperity. Each player draws X cards. It's going to do a lot of AoE damage. It's going to give you some utility in your hand. This is a deck where you want your opponents to draw, interestingly enough. I wouldn't say Nekusar is the most competitive general, but he's a fun chaos type control. he's not full-on chaos in the sense that you don't really care what happens, but you know, it does have that element to it. You have control with blue, counter spells, and you have board sweepers and, you know, card draw through black also, so it's very strong in that sense. Like I had mentioned, obviously you're probably wondering how this deck survives, you know. And of course, I had mentioned board sweepers, but also I'd like to have a stasis type element in it. So, Arena of the Ancients. All legends come into play tapped. All legends become tapped when it comes into play, and legends do not untap during the untap phase. So this is going to hose most Voltron generals, or, you know, generals that are reliant on their attack phases. So it's quite strong, low mana cost, easy to get out. Meek stone creatures with power 3 or greater don't untap during their controller's untap steps. Again, you don't need to attack with your general. You never will be. I mean, granted, there will be some circumstances, but generally you won't need to attack. So Meek Stone is a great card. Creatures with power 3 or greater don't untap. It's really great at protecting you. Next, you have Tango Wire. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player taps an untapped artifact, creature, or land he or she controls for each fade counter. Again, this is just a stasis card. It'll just buy you turns, lock down your opponents. It's pretty solid. Force Field. This is, you know, an old card, probably runs around $130, $140 to get your hands on a, you know, a decent copy of it. So if you can, it's a great card. Lose only 1 life to an unblocked creature. This is just great for turtling out. This can shut down so many generals, so many decks. It's just absurdly powerful. So if you can get your hands on a Force Field, I highly recommend it for the stasis component of this deck. Next, you have Propaganda. Again, just deters people from attacking you. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature he or she controls. And next, Call to the Grave. This one's actually often overlooked. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a non-zombie creature. So this is just, you know, turn-by-turn edict. What's great is Nekusar is actually a zombie himself, so he isn't hit by this effect. So it's just free sack mechanics. Next, you have Predator Flagship. This one is just great. For 7 mana, you can essentially destroy any creature that isn't hexproof or have Shroud or whatever you'd like to call it. So it's quite strong. I would recommend getting Predator Flagship if you can. Can give you flying in a pinch, I suppose, if you want to swing in with something, but I guess it's mainly for destroying flying creatures or other threats. And Mana Barbs. This is an amazing card in this deck, and it has won me many games. Obviously, your opponents are going to be taking sustained damage from Nekusar's Draw Outlet, but oftentimes it's not quite enough to get there. So Mana Barbs really puts a clock on the game and really makes people, you know, it rushes the game. It's another, you know, win outlet. All around great card, because, you know, you'll be taking 1, but they'll be taking 1 plus Nekusar, so, you know, statistically it'll get them there a little faster. Next, obviously, this is another thing you need on top of your stasis effects that we just previously went through. You're also going to need some defensive capabilities. Firstly, Blasphemous Act is great. 13 damage to all creatures. It can hit the big guys. Get out quite cheap. 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. Damnation. Destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated for only 4. Bit of an expensive card, but I highly recommend it. Black Sun Zenith, this is great, can take care of indestructible threats with minus counters. And of course, you're going to be running Tutor in this deck. You want Demonic Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, all of those sort of things that'll allow you to search for these in a pinch. Ingarrick's Wake is an absolute bomb. If you can, you know, afford to get this out, it takes care of Planeswalkers as well. So I would highly recommend that. Hero's Downfall, destroy target creature or Planeswalker. And then you have Terminate, which destroys target creature. It can't be regenerated. Both instant speed, both have great utility. Then you have Capsize. This is an amazing EDH card. Any deck that is running blue should run this. So Capsize returns target permanent to its owner's hand, and for 3 mana, that's all it costs, and then you can buy it back. So essentially for 6 mana, you can have an infinite bounce effect. You know, if you have them in some sort of a stasis lockdown, you can bounce something, return it, bounce something, return it. Every turn you can do this. Next, Cyclonic Rift, it returns an online permanent. So for only 2, you know, in certain situations you can return something that's pertinent. But if you can get to the overload effect, it returns all non-land permanents target player has. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. So it'll hit essentially all of your enemies' permanents. It's just so powerful in EDH. I'm surprised it's not banned. Next, obviously, traditional counterspell. You're running blue, might as well have it in there. It's another way to protect your stasis lock that you're going to try and attain with Nekusar. Recoil is nice. It's a cheap card, easy to get. There's many substitutions you could have for this, but return target permanent to its owner's hand. That player also discards a card, so it's not bad. Dissipate, counter target spell, exiles it. This is great for getting rid of, you know, graveyard recursion mechanics or anything like that, and then dissolve. Counter target spell, and you also get to scry. These are important mechanics because there's a lot of generals who are hexproof, Voltron type generals, And you need to be able to hit them. Obviously, you have your board sweepers, it's an option, but these are also great. So target player sacks a creature, and target opponent sacrifices a creature, and you gain life equal to its toughness with tribute to hunger. So these are some great options for that. Hey, this is Commander Turin, and thanks again for watching. Please like, subscribe, and leave some comments in the section below, and let me know who you'd like to see next time, and I'll do my best to get a Commander Spotlight up as soon as possible. Thanks again for watching, guys, and have a great night.